Hello, Michigan Realtors, and welcome back to the Letter of the Law. Like all of you, we at Michigan Realtors are still very much processing the news of this past Friday regarding NAR settlement of the various commission-related lawsuits. As we work through the specific details of the preliminary settlement agreement, it is important to keep in mind that while it is a significant development, we are still months away from an approved final settlement. This past Friday, Michigan Realtors President Sandy Smith issued a statement to all members regarding the settlement developments, directing members to the various immediate resources related to the preliminary settlement and its provisions. Links to that information, as well as a video from NAR President Kevin Sears and NAR Chief Legal Officer Katie Johnson, can be found in the description of this video and hosted at the front page of mirealtors.com. And while much remains to be seen, I echo President Smith's sentiment that it has never been more important for buyers and sellers to have a realtor advocate in their corner. With the likelihood of this settlement, there may be significant changes to many aspects of the MLS and the way compensation is addressed. As a result, there may also be significant ramifications for first-time and lower-income buyers that may lack the resources to hire a buyer's agent. And while we will learn more in time, I am extremely confident that realtors will rise to the challenge and innovate in the best interests of their clients, especially their buyer clients. Today's installment is dedicated to buyer's agency and is intended as a reminder of those best practices that will likely become absolute requirements under the pending settlement agreement. The following are practices to protect both you and your buyer client. Number 1. Treat your initial consult with your buyer client with the same degree of thoroughness that you would a potential listing appointment. With the likelihood that compensation from the listing broker will no longer be an option through the MLS, this is a great opportunity to discuss your value proposition with your buyer client and why you are more than worth the fee that you are requesting for your service. Buyer brokerage is a comparatively young specialization in the world of real estate. It wasn't long ago that sub-agency was the norm. Now we must cut out the noise and focus on formality and place an emphasis on the scope of your role as a buyer's agent. It is a smart and necessary evolution in the business of real estate. Number 2, always use a written buyer's agency agreement. More than sound practice, this is one of the primary provisions mandated in the pending settlement agreement. We have long understood that this should be viewed as an integral step in the representative process. It is also an important step whereby you formalize your role as an advocate and educate your client on the importance of having you tirelessly by their side during the competitive home buying process. For a firm that practices designated agency, there is no alternative to observing this requirement. For all other firms, this conversation and the signing of a buyer's brokerage agreement is one that should be embraced immediately. Number 3. With the likelihood that compensation from the listing broker will no longer be an option through the MLS, your first meeting with a prospective buyer is a significant opportunity to tie your value and scope of service to the fee that you are requesting for your service. This is also a key opportunity to discuss different compensation models that you and your client find best suit the agency relationship and the home buying process. Number 4. Continue to remind your buyer that commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. Consider including such language in your agency agreement. And lastly, number 5, a note on something we are starting to hear more and more about: seller concessions that include a buyer's obligation to the buyer's broker. You may have a buyer that wishes to negotiate with a seller in an effort to minimize or eliminate any financial obligation that they have agreed upon with you as their advocate. If a buyer has agreed to a commission obligation with the buyer brokerage, it is important for the buyer to understand the various negotiation tools at their disposal. One of those tools is not new, but certainly depends on the parties and the brokerage policy. The ability for a buyer to ask the seller to include, as part of concessions, some or all of the buyer's commission obligation is an important point of understanding for a buyer client. In support of this last point, linked within the video description is a template seller concession addendum that your buyer client may find useful during the negotiation of a purchase agreement. The form was created for use whenever the seller agrees to pay some or all of the buyer's settlement costs. In the embedded form, settlement costs are defined to include any commission owed by the buyer to the buyer's broker. The buyer would still be responsible for any excess settlement costs beyond the amount the seller agrees to pay. It is also important to note that there are limits as to how much a seller can contribute to a buyer's closing costs, which depend upon the type of loan, the price of the home, and the amount of the down payment. Nonetheless, it has never been more important for a buyer to secure an advocate in the home buying process. As part of that, your buyer should understand all of the tools in the negotiation toolbox. Thank you very much for tuning into this letter of the law. We know there continues to be major anxiety in the realtor community, as well as significant misinformation in the media about the very important work that you do. This letter of the law is not intended as a concrete analysis of the settlement. We encourage you to stay attuned to NAR's communications and continue to follow Michigan Realtors. As NAR rolls out the exact requirements of the final settlement, we will report those requirements and provide additional insights. Until then, we hope that this discussion was beneficial. Michigan Realtors will always strive to be a trusted resource and advocate for you and your business. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you very soon.